Ekene Ndilue there, giving us an insight into the context of our conversation this morning. So what is it? Is it a resurgence of the polio, wild polio virus? Are we still wild polio virus free? What is this thing that is circulating now? That's what we just want to make sense out of. And we have our guests who are experts in this field. They have joined us right here in the studio. So let me quickly introduce Dr. Kazim Mustafa, who is Chairman, Nigeria National Polio Plus Committee of the Rotary International, Abuja. Thank you very much for joining us as always.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
It's a pleasure to have you. Also with us, Dr. Usman Nadamu, Incident Manager, National Polio Emergency Center in Abuja. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians.
And we also have with us in the studios Dr. Basi Okposen, who is Director of Disease Control and Immunization at the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Dr. Okposen, pleasure to have you again.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay. All right, let's begin with the Incident Manager of the National Polio Emergency Center. Is polio back?
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me
say, yeah. What does all yeah mean?
You know, polio is not back. Let me thank you for the opportunity. I think what we are seeing is a mutant form, what we call circulating mutant form of the polio virus. We have been certified, like Kene has alluded in that report, August 2020, when close to 3 decades of effort to actually stop the transmission of all forms of polio viruses was achieved in 2020. Therefore, we are witnessing a kind of circulation of mutant forms just because of challenges we have in routine immunization coverage rates in the country, and also I would add environmental factors, because these are transmissions that are occasioned by contamination of food and drink from what we are seeing, especially in areas with high incidences of open defecation. Recall that Mr. President, I think, has signed an executive order actually to stop open defecation in all sections of the country by 2023 or thereabout. And also in 2019, he declared an emergency in the area of environmental sanitation. This is very concerning. So apart from the challenges of the coverage rate we are witnessing in routine immunization, which is why the agency, under the leadership of Dr. Faisal Shah, is actually driving what we are witnessing currently, improvements in routine immunization. The Director of Disease Control is here. He will provide more clarity and more details around that. Therefore, circulating mutant form is what you are witnessing, especially the transmissions last year reached certain levels, as alluded to the press release by Dr. Faisal Shah, sometimes in December last year. And therefore, this year we've not seen any case as yet. And because of the case in Malawi, our sister African country, a WPV, that's the wild polio virus type, we have actually heightened the alert level we have in terms of the risk for transmission of the wild polio virus. So there is a difference. The wild polio is more ferocious in terms of virulence and the speed with which it infects children. So we are still wild polio virus free. The Africa region is wild polio virus free. But we need to continue the efforts at deriving and increasing the rates for routine immunization, improving the quality of our polio mass vaccination campaign, and then maintaining the current level of the sensitivity of our acute flaccid paralysis surveillance, which is key to actually ensuring that we find polio wherever it is in this country. So those are the key ingredients for us to maintain to ensure that the Malawi case is not imported in Nigeria. We are sorry that our sister African country has actually notified WPV. The Africa region of WHO has actually heightened the risk level across all the African member countries to ensure that we prevent importation of these viruses. Therefore, borders and crossing points, land, sea, and air, right, will definitely ensure that individuals who are coming, especially from endemic countries, are actually ensured that they are vaccinated or they show evidence of vaccination. So these are conversations that perhaps next week, when Dr. Faisal will actually, together with our sister agencies and the Federal Ministry of Health, address Nigerians on this and what we are doing to stop the current transmission of circulating mutant forms of polio viruses.
Before we get into Dr. Usman Adamu, before we get into what is being done to stop it, we're just seeking an understanding of what the situation is. Maybe Claire,
yes, I think I'll still like him to explain further, because when certification was given by the WHO, it indicated that it was for interrupting the indigenous transmission of, the transmission of indigenous white polio virus. Yes. I don't know if I'm correct.
Yeah, you are correct.
Yes, so if I'm correct, I'd like you to explain what is the difference between that, the mutant one that you say we are having now, and the vaccine derived, because there's so many terminologies, vaccine derived, mutant polio, and this.
So there is a difference. The wild polio, like I mentioned, in terms of ferocity with which it infects, the speed, and then the virulence itself, and the paralysis. The circulating vaccine-derived, you've alluded to the fact, is the circulating mutant form, right? Is the vaccine, the type 2 vaccine that we actually apply to stop the transmission of type 2. That leads to what we call seeding. So the individual, the children who have been vaccinated actually shed some forms of these viruses in the environment. And therefore, children who are not routinely vaccinated, who live in environmentally challenging environment, now come down with these mutant forms. So the virus mutates and changes to another different pathogenic variant, let me put it that way, right? And then it has the tendency to actually cause paralysis, which may not be as serious as the wild polio type paralysis we witness. So that's why we are saying that all forms of polio viruses are purview to stop, and that's why we are continuing with the effort of a mass vaccination campaign in all sections of the country. This year, or rather 2021, every state of this country had 2 rounds of type 2 vaccine, what we call NOPV2. And in some states, they had 4 rounds, because even after the 2 rounds of the mass vaccination campaign, still there were detections, right? And we had to go back.
Sorry again to interrupt. Like Kinsley said, we're still trying to understand what is happening before we even take, to you further on what is being done. Yeah, so Nigerians need to know what exactly is, this thing that's going around now, so that they'll be able to report accurately, so that we don't begin to allege. Kinsley, am I right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's Dr. Kasim Mustafa. Well, let's bring you in here, because Rotary has been involved in the polio eradication campaigns. What is it that we are dealing with? And that's why I asked the question, is polio back? And if it is back, what type of polio? Now, we were told early on that the chief concern was with the wild polio virus, which Nigeria eradicated and was certified to have so eradicated it. So this mutant variant that has come out, is it a mutation of the wild polio virus?
Or from vaccine?
Or is it vaccine derived? Or because, I'm just saying, if you use general examples, we hear, for instance, this coronavirus, Omicron, Delta, there are all kinds of variants. So what is it that we are seeing now?
Thank you very much. Polio is not back. It's not back in Nigeria. It's not back in Africa. Even that's why, despite the Malawi announcement, what we are having, of course, we all know virus is a very peculiar pathogen, and when it comes to mutation, they mutate. But the mutation is because the mutation is opportunistic. And that is what Dr. Adamu has been trying to explain. We have the white polio virus, which is already checked and kicked out. However, opportunistically, the attenuated vaccines that the oral polio vaccine is excreted, of course. So, yes, the polio is attenuated, is supposed to be harmless. But because of contact within the environment with those pathogens, you know, the transmission of polio virus is what we call fecal-oral. It's either due to contamination with water or contamination with food. And if you have a very poor environmental condition, poor hygiene, poor sanitation, and in children who lives where we have open defecation, they may come in contact with these opportunistic, viruses, and they can be infected. One, because of poor immunity and lack of or inadequate exposure to common vaccines which they ought to have taken. And that is why the emphasis is on routine immunization. You see that we are always emphasizing that to keep polio at zero, we must continue to work. We must maintain the same level of immunization. And that is why, as we are working on routine immunization, we are not stopping the SIAs, the IPDs, the immunization plus days, the state immunization, the responses, and that is why we still have the calendar, to immunize, to go out to have mass immunization that we are going to have from 19th to 22nd of this month in FCT, Benue, Kogi, Kwara, and some states. So we anticipate this might come. In fact, as a matter of fact, we should give kudos to the surveillance system that is detecting this. The surveillance is so robust, and various activities that are going on behind the scene is what is detecting this. What is happening, it's anticipated. It's not an emergency to us. It's not unexpected. And that is why the whole activities concerning keeping polio at zero and eradicating polio is still on. We know that polio virus is just a plane ride away. The resurgence in Malawi has been traced from Pakistan, and that is why Dr. Adamu is emphasizing that we must keep doing what we are doing, because Nigerians are very mobile. The whole world is a small village. From Pakistan to Nigeria to everywhere is just few hours, away. We must continue to address every issues on immunization. We must make sure we're working on our routine immunization, and we must be working on the connected environmental issues. Eradication of open defecation, provision of water, sanitary infrastructure. We must put all this in place to make sure that. But let me give you a good news. The thing is that with this Malawi announcement, honestly, we are not moved. And for the purpose of media clarity, please let the whole world know that Malawi thing is, yes, of course, is of concern to all of us. But I can tell you, the whole Global Polio Eradication Initiative partners are helping the Malawian authorities, the Malawian health authorities, to mop up whatever it is.
We will get to that.
Yeah.
We will get to that. But I want you, sorry, Kingsley.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I would like you to, in terms of, trying to differentiate between the opportunities, one that you've talked about, and the virus, and the white virus. Apart from the velocity or the ferocity of the white virus, what are the differences between that and this new one? Maybe Dr. Okpose, who is a disease control person, maybe you should expatiate more on that.
Differences between?
Yes, this opportunistic polio and the white virus polio.
Okay. I think we'll just try to, for the sake of Nigerians, go back to the very basics. Once you give a vaccine, the vaccine stimulates the body immunity to produce antibodies. So at any point, the person is now meeting the real life virus, is protected against it, will fight it and defend. The person will defend himself or herself without being harmed.
Clear.
Now, I'm happy you say clear. So we now go to the second stage.
Yes.
At the second stage now, we give our children oral polio vaccine, and we give the injectable type. In the oral polio, of course, just to educate Nigerians for that, we give at birth, which is the 0 dose. We give at 6 weeks, we give at 10 weeks, we give at 14 weeks, and that 14 weeks, we also give the IPV, the injectable. Now, these vaccines that they take, the oral vaccines that they take, is an attenuated virus. As they stimulate the body to produce the antibodies to fight the main virus, they also excrete this virus, this vaccine. It's not all that is taken into the body.
Okay.
Of course, when we eat, what the body needs, it will pick a part of it. What it doesn't need will go away. So there's a part of it that goes out as feces.
Okay.
Where you have, we come to the third stage, where you now have poor disposal habits, where the environment is contaminated. And it's worst in an environment where you now have children that are not protected. They are not properly vaccinated. Area with low coverages, area with poor sanitation. If children that have not been vaccinated before, who now face this kind of excreted virus vaccine, right, they can be infected with it. But this virus they are infected with is not the live wild polio virus, which are classified into 3. There's type 1, there's type 2, there's type 3. Type 1 we eradicated in Nigeria over 20 years ago. So this particular virus now that we are seeing, the circulating virus that we are discussing, like you said, we need to know more about it. The fact is not that harmful, and research and studies have shown very clearly, once it's detected in an environment and there's a quick response, within 6 to 9 months it can be contained. It's easy to contain than the real viral polio virus.
Okay.
When it affects somebody, infect a child, the symptoms would not be that invasive as what we see in the real wild polio virus.
That's what we can arrest.
Dr. Okposan,
thank you.
When and where was this attenuated or mutated virus discovered in Nigeria?
No, it's for now. Generally, in almost most of the states in the country, we have seen the cases being recorded now. And seeing the cases being recorded, what the country is doing now is not taking chances. We are responding nationally so that we can contain it fast, because studies have shown if you have quick response, sustained and good quality response, you can contain it in 6 to 9 months. So that is what is, and that is what the incident manager at the EOC was trying to talk about. We are not just, with the leadership we have, being supported from the presidency to the minister, to the executive director, and all our partners working with us. We are responding with the outbreak responses to cover all the areas of risk.
What is slowing the response? Because the figure we have, or the latest information we have, is that we are having more than almost 400, 390 something, according to the figure, from your agency, 395 in 27, states and the FCT. Kingsley asked the question, where did it start? Where was the index case discovered, and why did we allow it? Why did we not tackle it if the response and surveillance system was so, effective and swift? Dr. Damu.
Thank you very much. And I think in terms of the index, it was around same time last year, 2021. And the genetic lineage is what we call ZAS1, and that came from around Zamfara State, right? And you recall, even countries with the most advanced health systems are affected by COVID. So that we must place here, so that for Nigerians to understand. I'm not saying that COVID prevented our robust response, and that was what we were able to do. When confidence came back to the health system, we went and conducted, like I told you, every state now in this country had 2 rounds of MOPV. The transmission now became, like you rightly mentioned, 397 of these cases spread across 27, 29 states. There are some few states that were not actually affected. And so what we are seeing now is a declining trend. It's like we've gone through the wave, right? And the cases have started declining right now as we are in the low transmission season, since it's dry season. Now, as we approach the rainy season, we are stepping up our efforts to ensure that these rounds of responses continue in every state, starting with those states that are the highest risk of transmission. And those are the some of the northern states: Kano, Jigawa, Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, Gombe, and so on, right? So we are containing it because, and that's why you see us together right now with the Director of Disease Control. Because
okay, all right. In terms of containment measures, we'll come back to it. Just one issue, by the way, Okposen hasn't expressed his view on this. Nigeria was the last country on the African continent to kick out wild polio virus. And I'm not quite clear as to how the incident in Malawi is being described. It says an incident of concern. It was imported from Pakistan, and earlier we knew that Pakistan and Afghanistan were the last repositories, if you like, of the wild polio virus. So what is it that Malawi is dealing with that we are saying that, oh, let us be careful? If it is a regular type of polio, then why are we, of course, we need to be up with our antenna in terms of surveillance, but what is it in Malawi? Is it wild polio virus? That's to say, is wild polio virus back on the African continent, having been imported from Pakistan?
Okay. The Malawi had been about 13 years free of polio until in November last year, November 2021, when a case of paralysis was picked, and then they followed up with the analysis. Yesterday, the case was finally confirmed from the US lab that it's the wild polio virus. And so they have been free for years, and they now officially, the first index case was confirmed yesterday. Our real wild polio virus was confirmed in Malawi. Yes, so that is why we are saying, even though they have been free for years, they find it come back. For us, what the IM has said, and Polio team leader has also mentioned, is the fact that we want to continue to be on guard to ensure that this does not happen. We were certified August 2020. We are still maintaining the 4 key pillars of polio eradication, which is the strong routine immunization, the supplemental immunization activities, which the outbreak responses are ongoing, the strong surveillance system to keep on searching and be sure nothing is happening that we don't know and taking on our ways. Because remember, a particular country about 3 years ago, once one was picked, we found about 20 around. That was not in Nigeria. For us, we don't want it to be like that, so the strong surveillance is being maintained, and then management of the few cases that for any reason that is being seen, and informing the public regularly on what is happening. So in routine immunization, a lot is ongoing. Yes, in 2020, we had the pandemic when it was announced. We saw when WHO gave a new policy direction that there should be no outreaches, there should be no this, there should be no that. But Nigeria was the first country that said we wouldn't take that chances. With the leadership of our executive director and our partners that supported us, we stayed in country. Within 3 weeks, developed a guideline on how we go about it. We engaged our health workers. So African countries were calling to us to find out what was happening. We also had a visit from the WHO to understand what we were doing as a country. And with that, we helped us, our routine immunization. A lot of people expected it would have really declined, but that was not the case. 2021 SMART survey, we still have 70% coverage for routine immunization for SMART survey. We've had the mixed NICs conducted this year. It's until that is officially declared by the minister, then we will share the figure. But what we are seeing, even though there was a pandemic, Nigeria did not still fail. We did beyond expectation, even with the pandemic that was on. And then also, we are now also giving adults the COVID-19 vaccine using the scale strategy. In the scale strategy, what the scale already is all about for the S is the service delivery, make sure that we have sites everywhere for Nigerians to be vaccinated. Then the C aspect of it is the crisis risk communication, making sure we give information to Nigerians, and we thank NTA giving us opportunity to talk to Nigerians. Then the A aspect of it is accountability. Whatever we have as resources available to be used appropriately. The L of it is making sure that the logistics we need to deliver the job to Nigerians are available. The E also is the electronic aspect of it, where real time we have data. And then the S aspect of it is supportive supervision. So this care strategy, what we've not done now with the leadership we have at the agency and the support from the ministry, we are now calling it optimized scale, where we bring in routine immunization. So if you're an adult going for vaccination, please go along with your child that is eligible. Every child that is less than 23 months living with you, make sure that child is fully vaccinated. If not, as you are going to the vaccination point, you also take along that child.
You know, vaccinated, no, clarify that. Take that child along to be vaccinated. Vaccinated for COVID, or vaccinated against COVID, or vaccinated against polio, another child.
For adults,
yes.
For COVID-19 vaccine. For children, all the other childhood vaccine, preventable vaccine that we are giving to them, from the polio vaccine to the pentavalent vaccine, to the PCV, pneumococcal conjugate vaccine, to the measles, to the yellow fever vaccines, and all other vaccines, the IPV that they need.
Okay, let me throw my question. I don't want to put it to you again, to the partner. Of course, that's Dr. Mustafa. Regardless of what Dr. Poulsen has said about what is being done, the fact that we're having this outbreak of mutant whatever pudding indicates that one, a lot of many children have not been vaccinated, and also shows there's a gap in strategy. So how are you coming in to fill this gap, in the renewed effort to deal with this incident?
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying the structure that has been put in place is to make sure that no child is mixed when it comes to getting access to vaccines. Well, of course, we have peculiarities. We have some peculiarities that can, make us mix, one or two or few. But the thing is, missing them is not the issue. If you have a coverage level above certain percentage, I mean, the herd immunity can be there to mop up whatever snakes into the country or into the environment. But as part of, as regards to the strategy to close the gaps, that is why it is a partnership. As it has been emphasized by my colleagues, honestly speaking, there is no time Nigeria has. One thing we have decided to do is never to be complacent. Even after the certification, the EOC is still working as if we are still there,
Are you putting more resources? Are you putting more money? Are you looking for, better ways of reaching, the unreachable?
That is what I'm explaining. Yes. Okay. That even with the certification, we are not the behavior. Our approach in Nigeria is not that, hey, yes, we are now certified, we are going to sleep. It's always been emphasized that complacency has no place at all. And that is why, even with COVID challenge, we are still, working at the EOC, at the partnership, as if, yes, we mustn't let down our guard. You see, scientifically, the moment we still have polio in any country, and as you know, polio is still in Afghanistan and Pakistan. But good enough. This year we've not even have, I think it's only in Afghanistan we've had only one case or whatever. In Pakistan, there is no case. That means gradually, even in other countries that are still that still have some level of endemicity, we are getting close to global eradication. And that is when the risk of it being exported or transferred to any other country, whether Malawi or Chad or England, will be near zero. However, honestly speaking, the partnership is still working assiduously to make sure that those structures and strategies are in place to work as if we still have, polio everywhere. And that is why the timetable of interventions like the OBR and outbreak responses, SIAs, the routine high PDs that you still see our team going around house to house or field positions, immunization in churches and schools are still happening as if, we are at war. Now,
Dr. Mustafa, let's pause you here. One aspect that you just raised, I think that, again, we would like our viewers to have some clarification on this. Is the goal to eradicate polio worldwide, including Nigeria, or wild polio virus? Because we were always told that it was the wild polio virus that was of greater concern. So, Dr. Okposon, very briefly, is the target for elimination or eradication of polio worldwide or wild polio virus?
It's to eradicate the wild polio virus because the environment will always have contaminants, whether bacteria, viruses, fungi, or anything. So the aim is, if we get our children vaccinated, they have the immunity. Even when they meet with the polio virus, it's not harmful to them. We are not targeting going to the saying we will contain all the polio viruses all over the world, because you might not see all of them too. They will always be there. You will never eliminate all the bacteria because they will always be there. But the aim is to get our children protected so that even when they meet with the virus, it doesn't harm them.
The wild polio virus.
So it is the disease we want to eradicate globally.
Okay, Dr. Usman Adamu. Yes. Earlier, we were informed that now the outbreak of the mutant variant of the wild polio virus can be contained if detected early. Within 6 to 9 months, you can manage it. So what is required in the containment and management? And arising from that management issue, the question would be, is this mutant variant, is it treatable or is it curable?
It's not curable. What is needed is for every child to really be vaccinated against all forms of polio viruses through routine immunization. Dr. Basi has already alluded to that fact. You need 4 doses, and then any additional dose will act as a booster to the child's immunity. We need to reach coverage levels of more than 90% for us to be able to stop the transmission of all forms of polio viruses. So that's what we actually require. And then, of course, the environment also needs to be in such a manner that we have safe disposal of our wastes and sewages and so on, so that we can be on track to contain all forms of polio viruses. So what we are saying is that we will continue, and it's because of the sensitive surveillance system that we have in the country that we were able to detect. Otherwise, we would have missed even detection of these viruses. So the surveillance system needs to be top-notch in terms of how we do active case search, visitation, community informants, telling us where these cases are, and then going from health facility to health facility, checking their registers to see whether cases have actually been reported there. If we have missed it, how did we miss it? We do a kind of post-mortem to see why did we miss this case. So the active case search, our surveillance officers, we call them disease surveillance notification officers in the local governments, 774, in Nigeria. And then the community informants are also there to report any case of any child that has fever and weakness of the limbs. And therefore, this is what we are doing to actually ensure we contain all forms of polioviruses.
Okay, Dr. Adamu, I will stay with you because you said that it is not curable. That's what you just said?
I asked, is it curable or treatable?
He said it is not curable. Yes.
So maybe the treatable is
exactly, that's what I want to ask. It's still hanging. That's what I want to ask. So what is the degree of body impairment, or whatever?
The only thing is the immunity the child built to actually prevent the child from getting paralyzed. Once the child is paralyzed, then it's only palliatives, right? You see a lot of children on the street with calipers, some with calipers. We do attempt to do some corrective surgery. I think Rotary supported this effort in the past, for some children that actually are seriously paralyzed. You see the paralysis, some one hand, some two hands, or some even the four limbs are actually paralyzed. So that's why the wild polio virus is more virulent. But this mutant form, perhaps one hand, and then even the paralysis, when you do a follow-up after 90 days, you see that it has resolved, right? But for somebody to be paralyzed and then you say treated, though I would add that the sensation is still intact and so on, because the child still feels some sensation in the limbs, right, that are affected.
Then there's nothing to worry about, Dr. Posa. I mean, if after a while the thing. So what's the cause for concern?
Okay, let me finish. What I'm saying is that despite the fact that sensation is intact in the limb that is affected, but the child mobility is very seriously impaired. The child cannot walk like a normal child with the two legs or use the two arms if they are affected. And that's where it is concerning. And then the vaccine actually is an instrument and a tool for eradication of wild polio virus in the world. And that's why we are saying that since it is eradicatable, we should support the effort of government and partners to actually be on track to eradicate polio virus transmission in Nigeria. Even post-certification, we need to continue surveillance like Dr. Kwati has mentioned. We need to continue routine.
Okay.
We need so that our immunity level of our children will be top-notch for us to be able to prevent infection. Treatable once the child is paralyzed, I'm afraid, is palliative.
Kinsley, I know you want to put the question to...
well, Dr. Kusan. Dr. Kusan is itching.
Another question.
Yes.
Let's also, adding to what he's saying, go back to some of the basics. Paralysis. In paralysis is the nerves that are involved. Of all the human body tissues, is the nerve that when something touches, you cannot really predict the healing process. And a lot of things will come in for it to be reversed. Before we come back to the polio, let's look at, it's like stroke. In stroke is a nerve that is involved. The rate of recovery is different. You go back to some few information like people that take alcohol, some will take half glass. They are already dancing. Some will take a full carton, they will be asking anymore. So the body response depends on so many things. So for children, even their eating habits, their nutrition contributes to how they recover from ailments, diseases, or anything. Now, if a child is paralyzed, we've said earlier, the one that comes from these variants, polio variants, are not that severe like the real polio. The recovery of that child depends on so many things. One, like the feeding of that child. If that child, the nutrition of that child, if that child is well fed and taken care of, taken immediately to a hospital where care, physiotherapy, and the rest are administered to that child, the recovery will be different from the one that, as it's just starting, they are taking to one babalawo. It's witchcraft. They will now add more injury to what is happening. They will starve the poor child. They will start flogging the demon out of the child. they cause more problems.
And then give the child Acamo
by forcing and everything.
Yeah.
So the approach, the nutritional status of the child, the care the child has can contribute also to a faster recovery of that child. But what we are pleading with Nigerians,
no. When you say recovery, what are we talking about? Recovery of the use of the limbs, or
yes,
recovery from the affliction?
Yes, because what is happening in the paralysis is that the nerves have been weakened, so it's not functional optimally. Okay. For the nerves, for the muscles, they have 0 to 5 power. You know that you grade. So the stage you meet the child depends on how the muscles is being affected. What is causing the muscles not to function is because the nerve supply to those muscles are affected. So the recovery depends on
the factors.
But
by the way, what are the symptoms of mutant or white polio virus infection? What are the symptoms? How do you get? And are the symptoms immediate? I mean, if somebody has malaria, we'll know what it is like.
Typically, for most viruses, when the child comes down with a viral infection, some will come with like catarrh, will come with some with fever, low-grade fever. Some will come with refusal to eat, and then all of a sudden they will now be playing around with his malaria, maybe his cough, and they will start looking for all those palliatives to give to the child from chemists before the town comes up with, if it is from the polio virus now or the mutant, they can now witness some form of weakness on the limb, either the legs or the hands where the child is not functioning maximally. So that is what will take some of them now to the facility. The child is not walking again. But if that child, like we said earlier, is well fed, is well managed from the beginning, a lot of them recover.
From the mutant?
From the paralysis, yes, yeah. And go. Even the wild polio virus itself, the real wild polio virus, there are children that is about 2 to 5% of children that come down with the infection with it that get paralyzed. It really manifests with the paralysis. So even this one, it is the same thing. It can be affected with it and will never come down with the paralysis. And how the child comes out of the paralysis now depends on the other arm I talk about, the management, comprehensive care of that child is also important.
Well,
but the advice to Nigerians is, let's not wait there. Please, take your children
you will give your advice, Dr. Posen, but I want to also look at your field officers, right? Those with the bag and the grain, when they go from community to community. Sometimes when you see that some of them seem lost, and then you look at the small box they carry, how will I put it now? It's the quality of what they have inside. You begin to wonder if it is really, safe. The vaccines are safe. Are they really, properly preserved? Because these are the concerns I get when I encounter them. I want to look at what they have inside. I want to see if it is really, if the storage is really, of standard.
I can assure you.
This is just my observation.
Yeah, it's your observation. Yes. We've a lot of people have also observed this. Let me give you this assurance. No matter how they appear, what they have inside that box is excellent. It's very safe. Why? Because a lot of risk management, a lot of safety procedure have been put in place to make sure that everything is standardized. In the early morning, before they go out, UNICEF is in charge of vaccine logistics, and at the local government level, even the world level, wherever we are taking the vaccines from, it is that morning. The logistic is so effective that the point where they are all living, the procedure to make sure that those vaccines are kept safe has been fully observed. Not minding whether there is electricity or not, the logistic people have made sure that all those freezers and coolers have been solar powered to make sure that the safety of the vaccines are guaranteed. And on the label of the vaccines, it is easy for any monitors or supervisors or people on the field like volunteers, partners. If you check, we have a checklist of what, when we meet with them, how we check from the questions they need to ask and the safety and quality of the vaccines. There are things we check. A lot of work is, is always going on behind the scene to make sure that, the vaccines are safe and guaranteed. Our people are well educated, people are advanced. A lot of homes, they will also go, some of them are scientists, and you can attest that nobody has really complained about, the quality of the vaccines. So 100% those vaccines are safe, because there are monitors, there are supervisors, there are different layers, of supervision to make sure those vaccines are safe. And if you discover in the morning, anytime we are having this mass immunization, it's not as easy as you just see them on the street. Those people you see on the street have been trained. We have pre-exercise training. They've been trained. They've been well tutored on the handling of the vaccines. They've been well tutored of the need to get those vaccines out on time and get to their specific locations. Because there are plannings, there are micro plannings, they already know where they are going, and they already have, the idea of their area of coverage, and they just get those vaccines, and go specifically to where.
It isn't as if they are roaming.
They are not roaming. Yeah. They are not roaming. Everybody knows specifically where he or she is going. And when you see those teams, they have their own target area, and they are not moving from one place to the other.
But they are. But they do. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, Dr. Kasim Mustafa, let's pause you. Again, let's bring in Dr. Basi Okposen to elaborate on this cold chain distribution of vaccines. If we recall, when Nigeria was shopping for COVID-19 vaccines, there was one of the vaccines from the US which was required to be stored at a certain temperature at all times, which means that regular power supply will be a requirement for you to have that. We had Dr. Faisal here with us. Honorable Minister of Health was also here. Good morning, Nigeria, and we'll discuss those issues. And then we again referenced the vaccines that are normally carried around for routine immunization. So, Dr. Okposen, speak to this, the cold chain. How is it maintained? Is there a disruption? The concerns raised by Claire, ones that, where we should all be worried about?
For the vaccines we are using for the program, we want to reassure Nigerians, like you said, that they are safe.
Which program?
Both routine immunization and the COVID vaccination. Let's start from the routine that Claire raised earlier. Before they go out, at the cold store, at the LGA we have the cold store where the vaccine is stored, depending on the type of vaccine. If it's the routine vaccine, is it the +2 to +8 degrees centigrade? Is this the minor storage, like you said, for the COVID? When they are going out in the morning for the vaccination, there is also what they have inside that geostyle that they have, the vaccine carrier, called the ice pack. So the ice pack maintains the temperature inside that is required. But the beautiful thing about the vaccine is that vaccine has a vaccine vial monitor that we call VVM, which is stage 1 to stage 4, that all the health workers, anybody that is a monitor, looks at to know the state of the vaccine. Okay. The stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Once you pick the vaccine, so next time you meet them, they should bring out the vaccine. You see, it's like a square, white square on the bottle. In stage 1, you see the box is pure white. That means this one is like tear rubber chassis. That vaccine is still very fresh. In the stage 2, you see it's like a fleet of gray around the angle. which is still very good. In stage 3, you won't see the white again.
Okay.
You see it all gray. In stage 4, you see it dark. Stage 1, stage 2, you can use the vaccine. Stage 3, stage 4, even if the expiry date is 20 years ahead, discard. So at the point of administration of the vaccine, that is what the vaccinator looks at. Once he picked up the vaccine, he will see, he will look at the VVM, are you sure that this vaccine is safe? If you are a monitor, you are out on the field, that is what you are looking at. So at the end of the day, when they are back to the facility, before, as they are making the account, if there is any vial they have not used, those are the kind of things they looked at before receiving the vaccine.
Okay, Dr. Kosa, thank you. I have another question, but that will be after our break. We're taking a short break. Now, when we come back, it's still related, with the cold chain and the carriers. So let's take our break now. We'll come back.
The ever-busy ancient city of Onitsha is a commercial hub with millions of commuters seamlessly linking other states daily for business, leisure, and other purposes. To upscale its road network, the construction of a 1.6-kilometer long second Niger bridge, including a 10.3-kilometer highway furnished with other infrastructure, has been in motion by the federal government. This project will ease congestion on the existing 56-year-old Onitsha bridge and boost the economic capacity of the state as it easily connects to other parts of the country. The completion of the world-class second Niger Bridge Onitsha will be one of the many proud moments of the state, its people, Nigerians, and foreign investors. Onitsha, which hosts the largest market in Africa, is geared up to boast of an impressive road network. Once again, these moments are made alive by the federal government, and it is deserving of all the applause.
We've been trying our best to contain the situation, and in our operations we've been able to make a lot of recoveries. We've been able to also arrest suspects that are involved in this kind of activities, and we've been able to also recover particularly arms and ammunition from those who are carrying it unlawfully and disturbing the peace of the people. But generally, our morale in the Nigerian police is always guided by our commitment to do what we have sworn to do. Peace and security must be looked into as a priority by all. To look at security as the business of all of us.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
We are all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who is a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Coming off a tough road victory, the Reds will face another relegation-threatened team, this time at Anfield. This Saturday, it's Liverpool versus Norwich City on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 3:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu and powered by Integral.
All right, welcome back. It's Good Morning Nigeria. We're coasting home now to 9 o'clock, but in the few minutes that we have, we'll just take some more very crucial questions. Before we went on that break, I was going to make a suggestion which we had discussed, off camera. I was suggesting that maybe the field officers could do with maybe a bicycle or one form of, tricycle to enable them move around, at least comfortably?
Well, every suggestion from stakeholders, because all of us as stakeholders, is always taken very seriously. And honestly speaking, I'm sure when we get to different fora or EOC or whatever, we can discuss anything that can bring improvement. But honestly also, I want to say here that the responsibility to keep polio at zero is for all Nigerians. Not only we, the health workers or concerned partners, and then we must make sure that we are all change agents in our different communities. Just like you have said off camera that you also monitor them, and I was advising that you use ODK so that we can see your participation. Let us encourage Nigerian parents, mothers, to be actively involved, either by encouraging mothers who still have children of that age to make sure they go for immunization, and to contribute in one way or the other. If we see the team, we can, I think it's just very good to offer them assistance, to also point to them, oh, these houses have children and what have you. So all of us as stakeholders. It is also important for us as partners. We believe that why we are doing all these technical things, vaccines and all what have you, of priority to us is also other interventions that are very critical to the eradication, including interventions in hygienes. This open defecation is so important to us. A lot of Rotary clubs are coming up with projects that we, intervene in all these other unmet needs that are exposing our children to polio.
Dr. Kasim Mustafa, thank you very much. The federal government has a WASH program. Earlier this week, we had the Honorable Minister of Water Resources. He was our guest discussing issues around WASH and water. But Dr. Usman Adamo, and indeed the other guests, have we tried, for instance, to research into why we now have the outbreak of the mutant variant of the white polio virus? Last year, no fewer than 3,600 Nigerians in various states of the Federation died from cholera infection. And cholera is directly traceable to environmental factors, in particular, poor sanitation. And here we are today. There's also been linkage from you experts of the white polio virus, the mutant variant, to environmental factors. Is there any linkage between that cholera outbreak arising from poor sanitation and the outbreak of the mutant variant of white polio virus? Dr. Usman.
They have the same modes of transmission. It's fecal-oral, as Dr. Kazim has alluded to that fact. Anywhere you see polio transmission, let me say it will be a proxy for a challenging water and environmental sanitation. It's the same mode of transmission with cholera. I assure you that any state that has high burden of cholera, like now we're approaching the transmission season, the rainy season, a lot of surface runoffs will now contaminate the body of waters where our people use. And this comes with it a number of disease transmissions, especially those ones that are transmitted through the fecal-oral mechanism. So polio and cholera have the same mode of transmission. Unfortunately, cholera affects all age groups, but polio actually affects mostly children under 5. Okay. So we are collaborating with other stakeholders, other sectors, other colleagues in Ministry of Environment and Water to ensure provision of water in high-risk areas. And then environmental sustainability. You've rightly mentioned, Kingsley, about the WASH the federal government is actually undertaking to ensure water and environmental sanitation saturation everywhere in this country. So it is something that will actually ensure that this disease transmission is actually brought down to zero level once we ensure water provision in all our communities.
Dr. Adamu.
Yes.
Thank you. I keep hearing stakeholders. Dr. Basi Okposen, last year when there was this outbreak of cholera, there were denials by some state governments. And the incidents were almost largely traceable to what we have said, to poor sanitation. So these same stakeholders we are calling on them, stakeholders, and local governments. How effective is your interaction with them to ensure basic sanitation?
Well, the good thing is, there was a point where we had the peak of the cases. The collaboration, like you've rightly mentioned, with stakeholders is what brought down the train of the disease in the country. And we are also still maintaining that collaboration with all the stakeholders, from the Nigerian Governors Forum to the Ministry of Environment and Sanitation, Ministry of Education and the rest, to educate Nigerians, to educate our leaders on the need to provide the basics, like water and the rest, to the people. Of course, the initial denial, what the reasons will be, because they won't want to be linked to failure. But a lot of them are understanding, because, of course, we have been here severally talking to Nigerians on it, giving the update on the number of cases. The cases have come down. From the national side, what we are doing now is also trying to see how we acquire more vaccines to be able to administer to people. And it really helped. And you remember we had so many cases in Bauchi, Kano, and Plateau. It's the vaccine we got from the ICG that helped. And we are moving a step further, because the vaccines are not available.
Cholera vaccine.
Yes, they have to also introduce it routinely. We are towards that direction. The global pool is short, but we are making effort to ensure that we have a pool that we can, when it's getting to the season that we know we will have high number of cases, we administer to people around those areas to have a reduction in the case, in addition to the environmental control like we mentioned.
Okay. In terms of upscaling immunization program, specifically to check the mutant polio outbreak, what is the response of the other tiers of government, states and the local government?
Yeah, the response has been very excellent, like Dr. Basi said. Even when there is any initial political denial, seriously, the truth is an open wound. Your conscience is there. It will always prick you that. But what we are quite happy that when we get to official engagement and you don't like stakeholders meetings, everybody is always coming to time with reality, and a lot of things and there are a lot of programs that is structured, that is already taking care of the activities at different level. On routine immunization, we have the emergency has been declared. We have the NERIC. We have now an emergency center on routine immunization, and good enough, this has been replicated at both the state and local government level. So whatever that, all those strategic directions, once it is, conceived and well put up at the national level, it's been replicated. We started with national emergency on routine immunization. We now have state emergency, on routine immunization. We now have local government. So that's to allay your fear concerning whether all those policies are percolating, to the lower level. Now, what we are also concerned about as partners, as we get closer to 2023 elections, that is our own concern at the partnership level now. And I think the media and every stakeholders, all concerned individuals, should join us in making sure that we all advocate to make sure that while we are doing the electioneering campaign, while governors and people that are sat with governance are busy with, you know, transition from one regime to the other, we do not get our eyes off the ball when it comes to activities that will concern, you know, eradication, immunization, not only against polio, but against cholera and other.
Yes, I asked that question because, you know, the concern that you have raised, even for, you know, agreeing to come discuss this program, this matter on this program, shows the concern, you know, and of course your response to the mutant. Are state government also, you know, following suit in, you know, responding to this mutant poliovirus? And then what about the vaccine? He said efforts are being made to procure enough vaccines to go around. What about that?
Honestly speaking, they are. You know, whatever activities that is going on, like for the response, you know, we have outbreak responses. Usually the thing is, when you have all those mutant variants, the most important thing is you must take steps to mop them up immediately. And the response to all those outbreaks, you know, they've been very excellent.
Okay.
When it comes in one state, the entire structure, the entire, you know, energy is, you know, directed to that particular place, and that informs how we structure the times table for outbreak responses.
Okay.
When you have response, let's say when we have outbreak in FCT, for instance, we don't look at FCT alone. When we are planning for outbreak response, you look at FCT and the surrounding state, thinking that because of their proximity, a leakage may have occurred. So these things are very structured.
Yeah, Dr. Mustafa,
Yes.
sorry, well, let's pause you again.
Okay.
I'm having to jump in here because we have very little time left. Dr. Usman Adamo, on the international plane, part of the reason given for the continuing prevalence, whether a few or otherwise, of the white polio virus in Pakistan and Afghanistan, part of the reason for that has been attributed to the conflict in those regions, some of the very hard to reach parts of the world in the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. So we come back home and we ask ourselves, look, conflict areas, how do these also affect either our attempts at full routine immunization or detection of cases in terms of surveillance?
Yeah, thank you, Kinsley. I think this does affect our capacity to actually detect in areas that are affected by conflicts, especially in the northeastern zone. The last hub of transmission we had for the wild polio virus was actually in the northeast, specifically in Borno State. But because of our collaboration with security agencies, I think that corridor access was actually opened up. And therefore, more numbers of children were liberated, and therefore we could reach them with routine and then supplemental polio vaccination campaign. But presently, there are states affected by various forms of security challenges, and that also collaboration is continuing for us to be able to expand our access to areas that civilians cannot readily reach. Even though we are collaborating and ensuring that locals who live in those communities are actually deployed as vaccinators during the house-to-house vaccination outbreak responses. But we require collaboration with security agencies and sometimes even vigilantes to support and escort our vaccination teams to reach everywhere with our vaccines. And that was how we were able to actually achieve wild polio virus eradication. Let me also say that there is a difference. You know,
Dr. Usman, I will have to
Yes.
cut you here. I'm sorry.
Yes, sorry.
We just want Dr. Posen to also have a last word because we have less than 30 seconds for you to say the last words. Maybe you will need to allay the fears or the concerns of Nigerians. Yes.
Just to reassure Nigerians, the vaccines we use for our routine immunization for our children, the vaccines we use for COVID-19 vaccination, they are real, good, effective, safe. They shouldn't fear. Please go out there and get it. Thank you, Mr. President, and your cabinet, and the Executive Director, Dr. Fesa, and all our stakeholders for the support for us to get these vaccines to Nigerians.
And there is no resurgence of wild polio virus in Nigeria. Am I right?
Yes.
All right. So Dr. Basi Okpose, Director of Disease Control and Immunization, National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, we'd like to thank you as always for finding time to join us.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Usman Adamo, Incident Manager, National Polio Emergency Center. We'd like to thank you, Dr. Adamo, for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you very much.
We also like to appreciate Dr. Kasim Mustafa, Chairman, Nigeria National Polio Plus Committee of the Rotary International. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to have you. All right, now let's take a look at what's happening on the foreign scene.
France and its European allies have announced they will begin withdrawing troops from Mali after nearly 10 years fighting an armed unrest. A statement signed by France and its African and European allies and published on Thursday said multiple obstructions by the ruling military government meant that the conditions were no longer in place to operate in Mali. The decision applies to both France